On this episode, I talk about the 7 things every athlete should be doing. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 102. Almost said 101, 102 of the Foundation First Fitness Show with Bob Echowen. I have been away for literally the longest time. I've just had a bunch of stuff going on outside of here, outside of the office. It's been taking me away from social media, renovations at home, a bunch of stuff going on here at work as well. Like it's just, since things started to kind of reopen and, we've just been dealing with a lot of clients coming in. So it's been pretty hectic here. And honestly, I think I just, to some extent, needed a break a bit and almost detach myself to come back with some new thoughts, some new ideas. I know I've said that before, but I really actually did finally take this nice little break. And I feel like I'm ready to go. I feel like I'm back at it. I feel like I've just got myself back. Mentally, I'm just there and I'm just dialed in, ready to go. So enough of that. Let's get right into it. So today, the 7 things that every athlete should do. Now, these are things that I think are like somewhat general. I'm not going to go really too in depth on them, but I will talk generally about them and potentially might be a nice segue into 7 mini-series episodes themselves, where I go into a little bit more detail and talk a bit about them. So I'm going to kind of scan over them quickly and then break them down in subsequent episodes. So the first thing, focusing on the basics. This is something I really don't even need to make an episode about, but if anyone wants to know, literally watch any episode I've ever done in my life, and literally I kind of sprinkle that in somewhere where I talk about the basics and how you should be focusing on the basics and where it all starts. Basically, the Foundation First Fitness Show is basically just building that foundation and working on the basics. But I will throw in a little caveat here. What I mean by basics and what I think that, when I talk about basics, it's not just do only basic exercises, but it is really just to kind of understand that the fundamentals are really where the biggest difference happens. You talk to anyone that plays guitar, they'll tell you the first 3 months of you going at it full tilt is really where you see the biggest growth. You're going to see that. You have nothing, you have no knowledge of it, and then you just kind of explode, and that's where you're going to see the biggest difference. And the reason that is because everything is really built upon the fundamentals, and it's why so many people say, don't rush through anything, kind of understand it, learn it inside out, really understand the fundamentals before you start adding to it. It is going to get a little bit more of a boring approach. And I know that I've heard that in the past. People talk about my style of training is sometimes being a little bit more mundane, especially at the get-go. And then once the first little bit is kind of done and we've kind of passed through it, everything just kind of picks up and things just become so much more interesting. And the reason that happens is because the fundamentals are where I like to take from. It's where I build my programs from. I take basic exercises and make them more complicated. And if you just really understand that, then I'm going to be 2 things. 1, comfortable allowing you to do these new interesting exercises that might be a little bit more challenging and going to be a little bit more dynamic in nature, meaning a bunch of movements going around them. Secondly, you're going to be able to go and work with another team or another coach or go work out anywhere in the world, and I'm not really going to be worried about you struggling with technique because you understand the basics and because you have a strong, sound understanding of how your body moves. Okay, so that's what I mean by go with the basics. So that's number 1. Number 2, understand that even a marathon is a marathon. The number of distance runners that I work with, not just distance runners, but all athletes in general, are so focused on getting to that endpoint where they're dominant athletes and really just powering through and getting that skill set and developing themselves as athletes that I feel like so many people just kind of forget that they themselves are still running a marathon, that they're trying to sprint through those early phases. And that kind of ties into the fundamentals thing. But when I deal with a lot of marathon runners, they're almost like they're doing a marathon, but they're treating their training and their approach to it like it's a sprint. Like they have to get better really, really quickly and they have to do it all at once. And there's no days off because if they take a day off, they're going to fall behind. And that's just really not where it comes down to. You have to understand that it is a process. It's going to take time and you have to treat everything like that marathon. And if you do, you are more likely to be successful, and you are going to find success in the sport you're trying to practice. Whether it's professionally, amateur, leisurely, whatever it is, if you train and treat it like a marathon, like it is a slow process, and you are going to gradually get better, you will get better. That's just how it goes. Bringing me to my next point, rest is your biggest weapon. I had a discussion with one of my athletes this week, talking about if we were going to be taking a down week, how would that affect us and how would that affect our performance? And honestly, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. If you take that time and you take that downtime and you rest up, there is absolutely no chance. And I'm talking about, like, when I'm saying rest, I don't mean like, use that as a reference. The number of times I've heard that in a team setting where people are like, oh, I'm taking a day off, rest is a weapon. You know what you're saying? That's not what I mean by rest is a weapon, like take every other possible day off, and just keep procrastinating on actually putting in the work. But it is understanding that sometimes you should be, if you have been going at it solid for like 6-7 weeks, having a little bit of a down week where you do bring down the volume, the intensity of your workouts, it's always going to make things better for you. If you're a distance runner, just shortening up that mileage, kind of going through the ebbs and flows of it. And that's what's going to set you up for a much better performance later on. You're not going to be struggling with trying to always like push yourself. Your body's going to be able to recover. You're going to find some recovery in there. You're going to basically generate yourself, and then you're going to feel so much, even mentally, you're just going to be more prepared. Even if you have to take, and even if you are taking that full week off, your mind will be so much more prepared for what you're about to put it through, that it'll be so much like you're taking a step back to take 10 steps forward, where everyone thinks that if you take that week down, or you take a down week, or you bring the volume down, that recovery week, you're going to lose everything. It's just not the case. Your body just doesn't forget how to bench press if you haven't bench pressed for a week. Professional athletes take like a month to a month and a half off the ice completely, where they don't skate, and they come back, and within a week or two, it's like, so imagine if you just took a week off, your body's just not going to forget. It's going to take a bit, and then you're just going to actually feel much better. There's enough science out there, and there's enough studies out there that show that if you take it down, or reduce the volume 1 week through power phases and through explosive phases, that you come back actually performing much better. So it's almost like a catapulting yourself forward. So that's just that point right there. Tying into that kind of rest, there is a component of rest that's going to help you. There's a component to that entire recovery phase that's really important. That's nutrition. I think a lot of athletes, when we look at nutrition, we think of it as the ultimate approach to build muscle and just keep building muscle and just keep building muscle. But there's so much more to nutrition than just building muscle. It really is, the full spectrum of building lean muscle, keeping your body and your hormones regulated. Everything's going to be balanced out. You're keeping your body hydrated. You're keeping your body in the right position to be successful, work day in and day out in the weight room and in your training and in your sport. And it's just going to keep you, it's basically helping you regenerate from workout to workout. And I think that's where a lot of athletes just aren't really looking at it, aren't thinking about it from that side of things. They're thinking about if I don't get the protein shake in, then I'm not going to be doing great. But it's really understanding on how to build that strong foundation of nutrition. I did have a friend of mine who's a nutritionist based out of Toronto, Corinne Chen. She did come on and talk about building that foundation of understanding how to, that kind of pyramid of importance in the things that you're eating to allow you to perform better. You can definitely check that episode out. I think it's episode 95. It might be less than that. It might be lower than that, but it's somewhere around there. I'll have to look it up. And I'll add it in the description down below if you're really interested. I'll put it in the bio to go check that out. But we do talk about building that fundamental, building that foundation. That's really what it comes down to, and allowing yourself to get the best of everything from the nutrition. You're getting the recovery, you're getting the muscles, you're getting all the proper things you're going to need to even just perform that day. So that's really important as well, and you want to keep that in mind. The next thing is hydration. It kind of ties into nutrition, but I wanted to keep it as its own subset simply because hydration has so many factors itself. And it's one of those things that, athletes, especially distance athletes, usually think about all the time. What I would tell you to do is ultimately understand a couple of things. And I've spoken about hydration before. Number one, you can't hydrate or rehydrate in one sitting. Like if you feel like you've lost, a lot of my athletes will do like a weigh in and then a weigh out, especially when we're doing cardio or harder days. And I tell them to weigh in and weigh out when they are at their own, teams, or when they are working with their own teams, or they're out of competition and stuff like that. I say weigh in and weigh out whenever you're doing, like weigh in the second you get there to your event, to the game, to the practice, to the arena, to the field, wherever you, like obviously not to the field, but before you go to the field, just so that you know where you're at in terms of hydration, so that when you weigh out, you'll know that in that time frame, you probably lost a little bit of water and how much you should be hydrating. But you got to remember that rehydration process is not going to happen in 5 minutes, and it's not going to happen by you tanking water for an hour. That's just not how it works. I usually tell people it takes about like 24 to 48 hours to properly rehydrate and to rebalance things, especially when you've lost a lot of water. So if you are severely dehydrated, it takes you a very long time to rehydrate. Your body can dehydrate quickly, but rehydrate, it takes a long time. So usually what you'll notice is that people start, just inhaling water at high quantities. You end up just going to the bathroom like 3 seconds later, and you're like, oh, it's fine because my urine is clear. It's like, no, it's not. It's just that moment your urine was clear, but you're still going to need some time to hydrate and properly rehydrate. So it'll take you a little bit longer than that. So that's what I'm saying. If you are an athlete, even if you're not an athlete, hydration is super important, and make it a regular thing. Try to keep it as balanced as possible. Weigh in, weigh out to understand how much water you've lost. And also urine charts are really important. I tell my athletes whenever they're dealing with their in season or they're in competition, urine charts are really helpful to help them gauge where they're at. Not the first thing in the morning, but throughout the day, you'll start getting an idea of where you are in terms of your hydration. Next thing is be mindful of the phase that you're in. A lot of athletes, I guess they get caught in not just within the workout and saying like, people are doing power before they should be doing power, plyo before plyo, like that's to your discretion. I don't do it, but a lot of people have different ways of how they structure their programs and how they structure their entire, their pyramids and their periodization. Periodization is basically just like the plan that an athlete has in place, like a year-long plan or a 6-month plan or whatever it is. It's just how they're organizing the flow of going from one phase to the other. What I mean by phase is in terms of your development phase. I think that a lot of athletes look at what professionals are doing or what seasoned veterans are doing in their sport, people that have been practicing for years and they're extremely competitive and that have years and years and years of experience. And they're almost doing the exact same things, thinking that that's the approach they need to take. And in reality, it's not so much looking at the advanced things that they're doing, but I would tell you if you are newer to the sport, I would say look at the things that are seemingly more fundamental that they're doing. And that kind of ties back into the first thing, but look at the things that they're doing and understand that that's probably the things that you should be doing. Because if they're doing it 7 years into them being a professional athlete, there's a good chance that that's what they were doing 7 years ago when they first started. So keep that in mind and continue doing that, because if they're doing it, there's a reason they're doing something that's so basic in nature. And it really comes back to you being like thinking of yourself as like a student. I wouldn't ask someone who's in kindergarten to do calculus. It's not that calculus is bad. It's just that person's in kindergarten. That kid doesn't know he doesn't know all these different, he doesn't even know trig. Like, how is he going to do calculus? He doesn't know the basics of, he doesn't understand algebra. How is he going to know anything? Like, they don't know anything. I don't even know what trig is anymore. Jesus Christ. Half of you people are going to be like, trig? And I'm going to be like, I don't know. It sounded like math. You see how much I forgot. So imagine what someone who doesn't even know what that is would think of calculus. So it's not that it's bad, and it's not that anything really is bad. It's very much that if it's not the right time, it's just not the right time, and it's not the right phase, and it's not the right, you're not at that level yet where you should be doing those things. And a lot of the things I see is, and the reason I bring this up is because 90% of it comes from Instagram. People sit there, they see a workout, or they see something on Instagram, they're like, oh, that's the thing I should be doing. 100% that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be focusing on that, and that's where I'm going to get all my success. And I'm like, well, I hate to break it to you, but there's a very high chance that whoever's putting that on Instagram is doing it for likes. And them putting up a workout where they're doing a lunge, a squat, and a push-up is not going to get many likes. And the reason for that is because it doesn't look flashy and it's not Instagram worthy. So I would be very mindful of the exercise that you're seeing and putting those into your workouts, because those might be really good, but they might be more advanced. So something where I would see these workouts, I'd see these exercises, be like, okay, that might be interesting. That's a creative idea. I like that. This might be interesting. This might be good for someone. I would switch this up and make this for someone who's a little bit more entry level. That's where someone with a skill set in understanding strength conditioning, understanding movement, would be able to take something that is probably more complicated, make it a little bit easier, and make it digestible for someone who's getting into it. So that's why I'm saying understand your phase, understand where you're going, and go from there. The last thing I'm going to say, this is something that I think came to me pretty recently. I wouldn't say recently, but it came to me pretty recently. I'm going to say recently. It's only been about a year, 2 years that I've been doing this. A year and a half, 2 years? I think it's been more than that. It probably has been 2 years, but I just haven't given it that much thought. Meditation. Meditation is like one of those things that when you do it enough, you see the benefits. But if you don't do it enough, it's almost like you don't really understand what it is and when it's happening. Like you don't understand when you're in it and what it's doing for you in terms of like mental clarity, relaxation, understanding, dealing with issues, dealing with your problems, dealing with anxiety, depression, all these things. Yeah, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a practitioner of that area. All I will say is from personal experience, meditation helps me sleep a lot better, which is also going to help me recover. Meditation helps me just kind of like clarify my thoughts. It allows me to just kind of like, when I'm getting like 6 million different ideas coming to my mind, meditation is what allows me to really just bring it all back down and make it all much easier for me. And honestly, I think it's, there's so many options out there. You can do YouTube meditations. And if you don't want that, if you're doing something at night because you don't want that screen open, there are apps that you can download that have some free options for you where you can do like sleep meditations or whatever. The app that I use, I do pay for it, but the app that I use is Headspace. I loved it. I love the explanations that go along with it. And the reason I liked it so much was because I really didn't understand I was able to relate to what was going on and what I was thinking about, and which is why I really liked it, because they kind of broke it down and said like they kind of explained what it's like and what you should be feeling and why these things are normal and how you should be treating it. And I almost like related to it a bit more. But other apps that I've heard great things about, like Calm is another great option. So, and I think there are some fitness apps out there that do have it as well, which is why I think that, if you are doing it, anyone who's ever done it that I know of that's done it like and really put some effort into it, not just, listen to one meditation and we're like, I'm good to go, I got it, I'm talking about like someone who actually actively meditates, or introduce it into their life, will tell you right away, like it's that moment where they can really just kind of like escape what's going on around them, really just be more mindful, be more present with the things that are going on around them. And it honestly brings down stress levels, brings down anxiety levels. It allows you to recover better. It's going to be super valuable for you, especially if you have, shorter nights to sleep where you aren't sleeping enough. It really helps you kind of pass out. The first time I realized it worked. Honestly, I was using Headspace. I was listening to it. And then at some point I kind of went like, oh, the guy stopped talking. I just kind of was like halfway through the meditation. I was like, oh, if the guy stopped talking, this, that, the other thing. And then I kind of like opened my eyes to like roll over and I realized it was like 7 a.m. and it was like light outside. I'm like, what? Like I was so taken aback by it because I did not expect that to happen. And that's when I was like, oh, this meditation shit's for real. So I would include meditation there as something you would do. So these are 7 things that I think that every athlete should be doing. Are there more things that I think athletes should be doing? Jesus Christ, there's like a list of 100 things I think athletes should be doing, but these are the 7 things that I think, for the most part are going to make a huge difference for you in terms of your performance in the weight room and in your sport. There's other things like mental, like planning, mental strength training, understanding like how to, create goals and things like that. There are tons of other options out there. There are tons of other things that are going to be great and helpful for you. These are just the 7 that I decided to put down today. So if you do think of any, drop it in the comments. Let me know what you guys would do and what things have helped you in the past, or things that you really like, or things that you really enjoyed that were super helpful for you as an athlete. Let's talk about them. Want to get some discussion going. Leave it in the comment section. Again, if you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. For the podcast listeners out there, thank you very much for sticking with it and listening to me again. I know it's been a while, and I will hope to continue producing some of these podcasts again. And until that next time, guys, keep building that foundation. Take care and have yourself a great day.